forgive your parents, because that's something most of us really suffer from, learning how to forgive our parents just because, they were not the kind of people that, were supportive or loving, and it somehow just things up in our lives. The first key to, this whole thing is always awareness. And firstly, you need to realize that they were never parents before. The the first time they were parents is basically when they had you, right? So you don't expect them to know better. You don't expect them to have it all figured out. And most of the times, the way they trained you is just the same way they were trained. So they, you know, subconsciously felt like it was right. Now, when you don't forgive your parents, you subconsciously carry the attitude, the same behaviors, the same programming, and be giving that back to your children. And at the end of the day, your children would, in return, act the same way you're acting now. So that's why forgiving your parents really, it's not about them, it's about you, and it's about your own children. Yeah. So if you need more insights about this, you could always you could always DM me. We could always talk. And maybe you grew up in a narcissistic home. You grew up in, a home where only one parent was available. You grew up in a home where you were not loved. You grew up in a home where, your feelings and your emotions were neglected. All these things have, in a way, made up the kind of person you are. And you might not know it. You might think that you're the best person, or you're really not the best person. You're just, a carbon copy of your parents. And I see that so well in my own life. There are some times that I just look at my parents doing something and I'll be like, this is me. This is really me. And I'm at the point of my life where I don't lie to myself and I tell myself the truth. At least what I feel is truth, or what I feel is true about myself. So, yeah, if you had, a toxic background, it's very, very essential that you learn to forgive. You realize that your parents are not perfect, so you shouldn't force them to be. And you shouldn't expect your parents to apologize, because in a way, apologizing, you know, to them, they didn't feel like they did anything. So apologizing wouldn't even make sense. But then you're conscious and you're aware of, you know, how you were raised and how somehow it has messed up yourself. And the interesting thing is, I look, back at how I was raised, and in as much as I would like to be angry, I also stay grateful for the way I was raised, because there are still some things about myself that I appreciate. And if you check out personally, you also would have things that you, are grateful for. So yeah, for those of you just joining the live, I was basically just talking about, forgiving your parents, learning how to heal. It's, most of the times you're always, you did this, they did this, they did this, but you realize that you also consented to it. And that's the truth. You also consented to it. But this is the thing, because we were much younger, you know, we felt like we didn't have the choice when truly we had the choice, but then we just felt like we didn't have the choice and we always just had to say yes to some, certain treatment or the certain ways that they, raised us. So you just need to, be responsible, take accountability for every single thing, and then to heal. It's not going to be an easy process. It's something that, happens gradually. But then at the end of the day, when you're able to cross that bridge, you'd experience real growth. So I always give takeaways, and you know me.